Welcome to the New Hampshire Theatre Podcast. I'm Zach Little. This is a show about making a positive difference in the world through art. And today we're talking to Malikah McHerring-Cobb, currently co-starring in the New Hampshire Theatre Project's production of The NICETIES, a play by Eleanor Burgess, directed by Catherine Stewart. The NICETIES is a play about a slowly building rift between a young college student, a woman of color, and her older white professor. It's about academia, history, race, sexuality, class, and if that wasn't enough, it's set during the 2016 presidential primaries. Malikah plays Zoe Reed, a college student and activist. We sat together in the back row of the theater the morning before opening night to talk about how she got started in acting and her thoughts about using art to educate and empower. We also talked about America's terrible track record of racial injustice and how it both motivates and complicates her career. Malikah was born in South Carolina, on a farm
in a little town called Abbeville, South Carolina.
Population 5,083.
And I started actually on the choir at my Baptist church when I was a kid. On Sunday after church, I would dance and perform and rap and do comedy on the fireplace for my whole family.
She loved performing this way, loved the way it seemed to alleviate tensions in her family, but she did not immediately understand that this post-church variety show was a transferable skill. On the farm, she didn't have access to much TV to speak of, but then her family moved closer to the city, which provided access to the coveted Disney Channel. Enter Raven-Symoné, stage left.
And I was watching That's So Raven on Disney Channel, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so funny. I'm funny like that. Mom, aren't I funny like that? And my mom was like, I don't know if you're funny like that.
Unclear on how to proceed, Malikah got help from, at least in my experience, a very unlikely source. Her school guidance counselor.
I was like, what is this thing that you can go on TV? How are you able to get on TV? Like, is this already something pre-recorded? So she was like, they're mostly actors. And I was like, what is an actor? She's like, they tell stories and they get to go and be on stage or be on TV or make films. And I was like, she was like, that's how you have movies and stuff like that. So I was like, oh my goodness, I want to do that. So what do I do to get started? She was like, you need an agent. And I was like, okay, what's an agent? I'm asking all the basic form of everything.
I gotta say, that's a great guidance counselor that you had.
Right.
I feel like most of the time when I talk to people about guidance counselors, we're like, what was their job? What did they do? I mean, they coached volleyball.
That's so true. Yeah, they did coach gym or something.
But in your case,
yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
For a guidance counselor to even know you needed an agent.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the end of high school where Malikah decides she wants to go to school for acting. She applies and is accepted to AMDA College and Conservatory for the Performing Arts in Los Angeles.
But my mom told me that I couldn't go to California. She thought I was going to be a crackhead. And I was like, Mom, I don't even know what crack is. I've never seen it. I've never
You were like, Mom, I didn't know what an actor on a TV
right.
was.
Yeah, exactly. So how would I know what crack is? So she was like, nope, you're not going that far away. So I was like, fine, you suck, Mom. I really want to go. And so I had to figure out a new school. So I asked my guidance counselor again. I said, what are some other schools that are for acting in the area? And so she was like, yeah, there's a school called SCAD. I think they have a theater program. Maybe you can apply there.
This is an age-old conflict between parents and children. Parents always want their kids to go to college nearby. Kids always want to leap from the nest. Tale as old as time. But I just have to say, you couldn't have asked for a better name for the undesirable local school that our heroine is now dreading. SCAD. Malikah's plan was to half-heartedly apply there and get rejected, leaving her mother no choice but to send her to LA. Alas, SCAD liked Malikah too. Don't worry, it all worked out.
I got accepted, and then I ended up going, but I never did a walkthrough. I never did orientation. I never went to the actual school to see what it looked like. I never did any of that. So when I got there, I was completely surprised that SCAD was this really awesome private art school and was way more than what I expected. And I learned so much while I was there.
Nearing the end of her time at SCAD, Malikah wins a coveted slot auditioning for managers in Atlanta. But it's not the opportunity that it promises to be.
So after college, I went to Atlanta for a year and a half, but my manager was not the best. And so she tried to get me to do nudity, which I was like, this is a non-negotiable. I'm not going to do nudity. It's not going to help my career. There's no reason for me to do it right now. I'm so new. If I do nudity right now, I'm written off. So she didn't understand that. And I just said, hey, after a year of you representing me, you've got me one audition. Where I've gotten myself like 15 per month. How are you only getting me one? And you just want, I thought she just wanted to receive the credit for what I was doing on my own to find the work that I needed to find.
It feels funny to me that an agent in Atlanta would insist on nudity and not instead insist on like zombie makeup or something, right? Because there's so many of those big productions, and all the Avengers movies,
right? Yeah, they shoot, and so
you could have been like a space gargoyle.
I could have been something cool. I could have been a barbarian. None of that was being offered to me, which to me said that, oh my goodness, I need to move on, and I need to trust myself to move on and know that I'm not gonna be any less of a person because I went through this.
After her stint in Atlanta, Malikah moved to New York City, which had really been the plan all along.
I actually never wanted to move to Atlanta. After graduation, everyone I always told was like, I want to go to New York. I'm going to New York after graduation. New York is where I'm going. And then when that happened, I was like, it's a detour in what I want to do, but maybe it's better for me to learn something about Atlanta and then go from Atlanta to New York. So in Atlanta, I found that it was much harder for me to get seen and actually work with the production companies that I wanted to work with based off of clicks, like within like knowing it's all in who you know type of situation. And in New York, I feel like it's not always who you know. It's about being in the right place at the right time and being what they need for what they're seeking, which to me, I feel like it's a lot more opportunity there versus being friends with somebody and just because I'm friends with that person, getting the opportunity to get seen.
That's definitely a frustrating thing about a lot of artistic communities is the need to know somebody, the clickiness of it.
Right.
Not only because, I don't know, I'm the same way. It's frustrating for me that I get resentful of the idea that I have to have some powerful friend or something to get something to happen for me. But also, it puts this asterisk on your success. You know, you're like, am I talented or do I just know the right person? So putting yourself in a situation instead where you can be recognized first for your talent, I can see how that would be a lot better.
Yeah, and New York has a lot of that. So when I first moved to New York, I was getting callbacks for shows that I didn't book. But for me, getting that callback and they didn't even know me and I had just been there maybe 2.5 months, to me said a lot about like these guys are willing to take a chance. They're willing to put me in the room and see what's going to happen and willing to see if someone new can give a new light to something that we're trying to present, which for me was like, there's only a matter of time before they see me consistently and they're like, oh yeah, do you remember that girl from couple weeks ago who auditioned for our show? Yeah, she didn't work for that show, but she was so good and I've seen her consistently. Maybe we should invite her to audition for this show. She'd probably be a great fit for it.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really understood. I mean, if you had asked me without knowing much of anything, like what's the difference between being in like Atlanta or New York, I'd be like, I don't know, there's probably just more theaters. just a numbers game.
It is a numbers game.
But I think yeah, but I think the way that affects the community and the way that changes how people are discovered is important. I think that's the more important part.
Yeah.
It's not just more opportunities, it's the way that having more opportunities changes the way people look.
Right.
The idea that New York City provides more unrestrained opportunity than a smaller city like Atlanta is actually supported in a slightly weird way by the fact that Malikah was sitting there talking to me in a theater in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. She got this gig after a string of opportunities in New York led her to an audition in Boston, where a director sent her information along to Catherine Stewart and Genevieve Aishel at the New Hampshire Theatre Project. They were looking to cast the NICETIES, and they hired Malikah on the strength of a videotaped audition. When she accepted the part, she hadn't even read the full script. When she did,
I said, oh my gosh, this is intense. This is a lot. Whoa, I don't know what type of town New Hampshire is. But if we're going to be doing a lot of informing people on the realities of what exists in academia and also in different cultures and in different sexualities. And I thought that was really important. So I started like, okay, wow, I'm going to do this. This is something that I feel like I can channel well and access, and also feel like I won't be limiting myself. This will be a role for me to tell a story for women who look like me, and also women who don't look like me, and be able to understand. So that's, yeah.
And when she arrived for rehearsals, it was actually her first time ever in New Hampshire. But it was less culture shocky than you might imagine.
When I got here, the first thing when I stepped off the bus, I was like, oh my gosh, this place reminds me of home. It reminds me of like South Carolina and being around small towns. And the first thing, I go into a Starbucks and they're like, good morning, so good to see you. How are you? You look great. And I'm like, it's 6 a.m. It's 6 a.m. I'm like, you guys are so nice. In a way that feels genuine, versus like in New York, it's like, they're like, good morning, and it's just more like I got to do this. I got to say this. We're just living our normal 9-to-5 day situation. So I was welcomed. Sometimes the states aren't as welcoming, but that's just because of the culture of the state. I think that has a lot to do with like people being progressive or not, or being happy in the bubbles that they've created for themselves. And so I can only do what I can do, and that is be myself. And if being myself is not good enough for you, then I'm not going to try to please you to make sure that you feel comfortable, which I think this play talks a lot about. It's like, I'm not going to do that. That's not what my job as a Black woman of color, as a Black woman in the United States of America, it's not my job to make you feel comfortable if you don't feel already comfortable around me. I didn't feel like there was a bubble here. I felt like there were so many smiles when people were looking at me, and just like genuine acceptedness, not something where, oh, I'm judging you because you're a person of color and you're in my town, or like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Like that type of thing. It's more like, I've never seen you before. What made you come here? What made you decide to come here? Because like, you didn't have to come to New Hampshire, that type of thing, versus like, why are you here? What are you really doing?
Yeah, I can see how that would be not the kind of look you'd want to get. So this play we're talking about, it opens tonight, in fact, as we're sitting here.
Yeah, it opens tonight.
And it's a work that I think, it's confrontational, it's educational.
Yeah.
I only saw the first act last night, but it covers a lot of ground.
It does, yeah. It talks so much about, it talks so much about everything.
Have you done a lot of work like this before? I mean, you'd mentioned some other work that you were interested in that sort of explores social issues.
Yeah, I was told very young that my voice is something that's going to help me be a leader. And so with that being said, I've always chosen work that means something. All of it has to do with making sure that I'm speaking for people who, like speaking for myself or speaking as a character, to inform, giving them resources. And I do enjoy, like I did Shakespeare this past summer, which was very interesting in itself, because Shakespeare, you can do Shakespeare and not worry about color at all, unless like you're talking about Othello. Doing that, I felt liberated because I didn't have to worry about so much color, but more about the text, which for me was very exciting. On top of that, I got to layer in the fact that, if I'm playing a king, then I do, as a Black woman, then I get to add in that layer of what does that mean, and how liberating, and what does that say for someone watching me on stage of color who wants to be in that type of power, Can they do it, and how does it work, and how does she bring everyone together? Do people listen to her? She is a Black woman, that type of thing. And then how does she maneuver around that? And how does she assert her power? And how does she continue making the right choices for everybody when there's not just Black people underneath her? It's all these different races and different communities and different demographics. Yeah. Yeah,
I can see how that would be. On the one hand, it can be a nice break, right? But that you're right, that it's still powerful in and of itself.
Right.
And maybe you have to do a little less of the work. But the audience, it's still the same. It still can be powerful for them. I identify a lot with Malikah's desire to do work that explores important issues, pushes the conversation forward. But, I'm a white guy. The stakes are so much lower for me, and people don't look to me on a regular basis, like on the street, and expect me to represent and explain my race and my validity. It's very different for people of color. And I was curious about how she balanced those factors, the desire to educate and the undue burden of having to in the first place. But you were talking about kind of how it's not necessarily... I guess what I'm asking is, like, do you ever get tired of it? Like, here I am having to keep teaching people?
I think sometimes I'm like, maybe I should do something different. But the minute I do, then I don't feel like the work I'm doing is important. I tried doing a show, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, where it was just like a bunch of women talking about their husbands and very lighthearted and comedy driven, which was fine. But I found myself being like, what am I doing? What am I really saying? Am I doing something to help get the conversation started, to help change the world a little bit at a time? Or am I just doing this for the sake of my own, like, wanting to do it? And I think anyone who's trying to do something impactful has to think about not only themselves, but who they're doing it for, the service behind it. I may be tired of having to educate people, but it seems like people still aren't getting the message. If we were beyond this, then these plays would not need to be had. We'd be on to moving on to, like, you know, how can we be more connected? How we'd be talking about more lighthearted stuff. But these things are obviously proving that we still don't know. We still can't have that conversation. So that's why people want to come see the show or any of these shows, because they just want to be more informed. They want to figure out a way to be more involved or more progressive or more liberated, because it's not where we need to be.
Do you think there's something particular about theater, you're really sitting there 3 feet from people talking about these issues. Do you think there's something about the immediacy of that, I don't know, amplifies these issues, makes it more powerful, makes it a better tool for educating people?
Yeah, I think when you're watching TV, it almost feels like it's pure entertainment. And sometimes you may watch a show and feel like you're connected to a character and you're like, oh, wow, I feel like that's me, or I feel connected to this character. But then you turn the show off and you're like, well, now I got to go about my day. I got to do my own thing. I got to figure out a way to just exist in this world. But when you see really good theater and you see yourself on stage, it's almost like you can't not confront it, which I think is the beauty of any type of theater, is we try to create theater for people who we see in ourselves. And so the more honest and realistic and true that is, the more it makes us be raw, because you can't hide. I mean, you may be in this room with all these different people, but you can't hide. Once you're in that seat, you're pretty much stuck until intermission, or, you know, say you have to use the restroom or something like that. But it's really hard to avoid the unavoidable, which is the root of like what is our soul saying to us while we're watching this, versus like when we're watching a show, it's like, what is our mind telling us while we're watching this? What is this show trying to tell us? The theater, I feel like, what is the soul trying to tell us about ourselves that we haven't reached for, that we haven't seen before, that we haven't addressed? And then it makes for most of the time when I've seen theater that has changed my life, I'm like, I'm emotionally raw. I'm emotionally available. I'm open to receive that, because that's pain that I need to let out. I need to be aware of. I need to be more conscious of, so that I can heal, so that I can maybe do some impactful work in the future.
Thank you to Malikah McHerron-Cobb for joining us today. Thanks also to Catherine Stewart and Genevieve Aishel. And thank you for listening.